The classroom was huge, big enough to hold 200 students from 30 different species. Sat in the middle row, his open in front of him. Next to him sat another human cadet. They both wore the gray uniforms of the Galactic Coalition Military Academy. Today's class was combat theory, taught by instructor. The instructor was standing nearly 8 feet tall with thick armor plating covering his body. His forearms moved as he spoke, and his voice was deep and rough. Today we discuss the warrior traditions of your people, announced. Each species has proud combat history. Share yours. A student stood first. His name was Or, and he was eager to speak. My people have fought for honor for 10,000 years. We train from birth. Every knows 50 ways to kill with bare hands. Other students nodded with respect. There were famous warriors across the galaxy. Next, a student name stood up. We're reptilian with scales that could deflect small weapons. My species conquered 12 systems before joining the coalition. We never lost a war. Never. Our generals write books that other species study. More students shared their stories. They talked about their battle fleets. They described their ancient dueling codes. Every species had something to brag about. Everyone except the humans. Notice this. He looked at the 6 human cadets in his class. What about Earth? He asked. Humans have been in the coalition for 50 years. Tell us about your warrior culture. Felt everyone's eyes turn to him. He kept his face calm and neutral. We prefer not to talk about it, sir. The instructor's 4 eyes blinked in confusion. Why not? Are you ashamed? No, sir, said quietly. We just don't discuss it. Laughed from across the room. They have nothing to discuss. Humans are weak. They come from a peaceful world. Some other students joined the laughter, said nothing. He just looked down at his. Raised one hand and the room went quiet. That will be enough, he said, but he was curious now. In all his years teaching, no species had ever refused to share their combat history. It was strange. After class ended, returned to his office. He opened his computer and searched for information about Earth's military history. What he found surprised him. Every file was marked classified. Battle records, classified. Historical wars, classified. Military strategy documents, classified. Even basic timeline information was blocked. To access any of it, he would need level 9 security clearance. That was the highest level in the entire coalition. Why would a species classify their entire combat history? Tried a different approach. He looked up human performance records at the academy. What he found was interesting. Was ranked 3rd in tactical planning out of 200 students. Was 5th in strategic thinking. Another human was 2nd in combat simulations. The human cadets consistently scored in the top 10% of every military class. But they never celebrated. When other students won simulations, they cheered and boasted. When humans won, they simply nodded and left the room. They never talked about how they won. They never shared their techniques. The other cadets thought humans were just humble, but had been a soldier for 60 years. He knew the difference between humility and something else. This was something else. Over the next week, watched the human cadets more carefully. He noticed small things. When the class studied famous battles, the humans always asked questions about civilian casualties. When they practiced tactics, they always looked for ways to end fights quickly with minimum losses. When other students talked about glory in combat, the humans stayed silent. One day showed the class a video of a famous battle. The fleet had fought against rebel forces. It was a glorious victory. Many died with honor. After the video stood up. This is what real warriors look like. They face death with pride. Noticed expression. The human looked sad, not disgusted or afraid, just sad. Cadet called out, "You have a question." Hesitated. "How many total casualties, sir, on both sides?" "Does it matter?" said. "They won with honor." "It always matters," said quietly. Then he seemed to catch himself and went silent again. That night couldn't stop thinking about it. He had fought in 17 battles during his military career. He had medals and scars and stories. Like most warriors, he was proud of his service. But these humans treated war like it was. What? A burden, a secret, a shame. He decided to speak with them directly. The next day, asked him to stay after class. When the room was empty, he closed the door. "I need to understand," said. "Why do you hide your combat history?" And looked at each other. Some silent communication passed between them. "Sir," finally said, "can I ask you a question first?" Nodded. "How many wars has your species fought?" 43 major conflicts," said with pride. "Over 12,000 years. And you're proud of this?" "Of course, we defended our people, we fought with honor." Nodded slowly. "We understand that. Many species fight for good reasons, defense, honor, territory, we respect that." "Then why not share your own history?" "Spoke up because our history is different, sir. We're not ashamed, we're just careful about who knows." "Careful why?" "Because some things once known can't be unknown," said. "Some knowledge changes how people see you." Felt frustrated. "You speak in riddles." "I'm sorry, sir," said. He looked genuinely apologetic. "I can tell you one thing. If you really want to know, look up how long Earth had recorded history. Then look up how much of that time we spent at peace." "That's all you'll tell me?" "That's all we're allowed to tell you, sir," said. "The rest is classified for a reason, a good reason." Watched them leave. Two young humans, barely 20 years old, carrying some heavy secret. He returned to his computer and did the search suggested. Earth had approximately 5,000 years of recorded history. He found the next number easily enough, though it seemed wrong. He checked 3 different sources. They all said the same thing. Total years of peace in human history, 268 years. That meant, did the calculation, that meant humans had been at war for over 94% of their recorded history. But that couldn't be right. That would mean Earth had always had war somewhere on the planet, for 5,000 years, not one planet-wide peace, not until very recently. Sat back in his chair, staring at the numbers. Suddenly, the human silence made more sense, and it made him very, very curious about what was in those classified files. The next morning was waiting outside the Combat Simulation Center. He had 6 other cadets with him. When and arrived, blocked their path. "I challenge you to a simulation," said loudly. Other students stopped to watch. "Let's see if humans can actually fight or if you just study books." Looked tired. "We don't need to prove anything." Scared, smiled, showing sharp teeth. Put her hand on shoulder. "We'll accept," she said calmly. "When?" "Today, after classes, full combat simulation." Looked very confident. "My team against yours." "Fine," said. "We'll be there." As they walked away, whispered too, "We should have said no." "Too late now," replied. "Besides, they won't stop until we show them something." "That's what I'm afraid of," said quietly. Word spread quickly through the academy. By the end of the day, 50 students crowded into the observation room above the simulation center. Even instructor came to watch. The simulation room was massive, creating virtual environments using hard light technology. Today's scenario was a military base assault. 2 teams would compete. One team defended a fortified base. The other team had to capture it. The simulation would track hits, casualties, and tactical decisions. A team of 7 took the defense position. They were all big, strong, and trained in combat since childhood. They set up defensive positions with confidence. Assembled the human team. Besides herself, and there was, and 2 other humans named, and 6 humans against 7. The humans wore light armor and carried standard simulation weapons. "Ready?" the computer asked. "Ready," both teams confirmed. The simulation began. And his team expected a direct assault. That's how most species fought. You identified the objective, planned your attack, and charged with courage and strength. It was honorable. It was traditional. For the first 10 minutes, nothing happened. They waited, weapons ready, but no attack came. They checked their sensors. The human team had spread out and disappeared into the virtual forest around the base. "Where are they?" one asked. "Hiding like cowards," said. "Fine, we'll hunt them down." He sent 2 out to scout. They moved carefully through the trees, weapons raised. After 5 minutes they heard a sound. Both turned toward it. The sound was a rock hitting a tree. While they looked at the rock, dropped from a tree branch above them. 2 quick shots. Both were marked as eliminated by the simulation, disappeared back into the forest before they even fell. What stared at his screen in shock? How? The pattern continued. The humans never attacked directly. They made sounds to draw out. They used the environment. They set traps. They struck from unexpected angles and vanished immediately. One chased through the forest, seemed to be running away, scared. The followed eagerly, ready for an easy kill. Ran straight toward a cliff edge, then rolled aside at the last second. The tried to stop but couldn't. He fell off the cliff, eliminated. In the observation room, students watched in silence. This wasn't how they learned to fight. There was no glory here, no honor, just efficiency. Watched carefully. He recognized some of the tactics from ancient military texts. Ambush, misdirection, using terrain as a weapon. But the humans did it so smoothly, like they'd done it 1,000 times before. Soon, only and one other remained. They pulled back to the base, defending the final position. They expected the humans to assault the base now. Instead, the humans cut the base's power. Then they cut communications. Then they destroyed the base's water supply line. They never came inside. They just waited outside, eliminating anything that came out. "This is ridiculous," shouted. "Come and fight us face to face." No response came. Another hour passed in the simulation, and his teammate were trapped inside with no power, no communications, and no supplies. Finally, they had to surrender. The simulation ended. Victory, human team. Casualties, humans, 0, 7. In the observation room, nobody cheered. The students looked confused and uncomfortable. One student spoke up. That wasn't fighting, that was something else. Understood what disturbed them. The humans had treated the simulation like a real war, not a test of courage or skill, but a problem to solve. They showed no mercy, no honor in the traditional sense. They simply won, with 0 losses. Down in the simulation room, the teams removed their equipment. Approached, anger on his face. "You fought like cowards, no honor, no bravery." Looked at him with those calm, sad eyes. The simulation said capture the base. We captured it. No rules said we had to do it your way. A real warrior faces their enemy. A real soldier completes the mission, said quietly, walking up beside. Glory doesn't matter if your team dies. You humans know nothing of warrior culture, shouted. For just a moment, something changed in its expression, something cold. We know more than you think, he said softly. We just choose not to use it. The 6 humans walked away together. They didn't celebrate their victory. They didn't talk about it. They went to the cafeteria, ate a quiet meal, and returned to their rooms. Later that night, found in the library. She was studying medical protocols, not military tactics. That was interesting today, said, sitting across from her. Looked up, I suppose so, sir. Where did you learn those tactics? School, said. Every human learns history. History, that was history. Closed her book. Sir, can I ask you something? When your species studies war, what do you study? Famous battles, great generals, codes of honor. We study that too, said. But we also study what war actually costs, what it does to people, how it spreads, how to end it quickly. She paused. How to win it when you have no choice. You sounded like you've actually been in war. No, sir, I'm 20 years old, I've never seen real combat, looked very serious. But my grandparents did, and their grandparents, and theirs, and every generation back for 5,000 years. War is in our history like water in an ocean. We learned everything about it because we had to. Had to. Because we kept doing it, sir, over and over. We got very, very good at it. Stood up, gathering her books. That's why we don't brag. Being good at war isn't something to be proud of. It's something to be careful with. She left alone in the library. The instructor sat quietly, thinking about what he'd seen. The way the humans fought was effective, yes, but it was also disturbing. It showed deep understanding of how to hurt, trap, and defeat an enemy with cold efficiency. Most warrior species fought for honor, territory, or glory, but watching the humans today realized they fought like war was simply work, unpleasant work that needed to be done correctly. It was the difference between someone who fought because they wanted to and someone who fought because they'd had to. Many, many times. Made a decision. He would request level 9 clearance. He needed to see those classified files. He needed to understand what made these quiet, polite humans fight like they did. Because something in their history had taught them that winning mattered more than glory. That survival mattered more than honor. And he needed to know what experiences could teach a species that lesson so thoroughly. Filled out the request form for level 9 security clearance. He needed a good reason, so he wrote that understanding human combat psychology would improve his teaching effectiveness. As an instructor and decorated veteran, his request carried weight. The approval would take weeks. While he waited, tried to learn whatever he could through public records. He found very little. Earth's entry into the Galactic Coalition 50 years ago was documented. First contact had been peaceful. Humans had already achieved faster-than-light travel on their own, which was rare. Most species were discovered by the Coalition and given the technology. Humans invented it themselves. Their admission into the Coalition was voted through, but notice something odd in the old records. The vote was close. 40% of Coalition members voted against allowing humans to join. Why, the official records didn't say, just concerns about cultural compatibility. Dug deeper, he found an old interview with a diplomat who had visited Earth before first contact. The diplomat was asked what surprised him most about humans. His answer, they survived themselves. What did that mean? Searched for Earth's technology level. Humans had nuclear fusion, quantum computing, genetic engineering, artificial intelligence, and faster-than-light travel. Standard technology for spacefaring species. But then he noticed something strange. Humans had developed nuclear weapons 300 years before developing fusion power. They had created weapons before clean energy. They had the ability to destroy their own planet while still confined to it. Checked records for other species. None of them had done this. Most species developed dangerous weapons only after spreading to multiple planets, when extinction was no longer possible from a single mistake. Humans were different, they could have destroyed themselves, but they didn't. One evening, invited to his office for tea. It was an informal meeting, not official business. I'm trying to understand your species, admitted. Not to judge, just to understand. Sipped his tea slowly. What do you want to know? The simulation, those tactics, where did they come from? History, like I said before. But which war, which battle? Smiled sadly. Which one? Sir, those tactics came from hundreds of wars, thousands maybe. The ambush strategy was used by ancient Korean warriors 1,500 years ago. The terrain traps came from Vietnamese fighters 300 years ago. The patience and waiting came from Native American tactics 500 years ago. The supply line disruption came from a dozen different conflicts. Set down his cup. You memorize tactics from wars that old. Every human child studies them. We have museums full of weapons, libraries full of battle accounts. We study ancient wars the way other species study ancient art. Why? Was quiet for a long moment. My grandmother told me something when I was young. She said, "Those who forget history are doomed to repeat it." Humans don't want to repeat our history, sir, so we remember it, all of it, every mistake, every horror, every innovation in death. That sounds like a terrible burden for children. It is, agreed. But it's necessary because humans, sir, we're good at war, very good, too good. And being good at something dangerous means you need to respect it. Thought about this. The other cadets think you're weak because you don't boast. Let them think that. Doesn't it bother you? Sir, I'd rather they think I'm weak than fear what I actually am. Stood up to leave. My people made a choice when we joined the coalition. We decided to be neighbors, not conquerors. Friends, not enemies. That means hiding some truths. After left, felt more confused than before. Every answer led to more questions. He started noticing other small things about the human cadets. During a medical class, while other students were squeamish about injury treatment, the humans were calm and efficient. During survival training, while other species panicked without technology, the humans adapted easily. In one exercise, students were dropped in a wilderness with no tools. They had to survive 3 days. They tried to hunt large animals and failed. They tried to build elaborate shelters and got exhausted. The humans, led by, made simple traps, caught small animals, built basic shelters, and even had extra food to share by day 2. When asked how they knew these skills, just shrugged. We learned it in school, basic survival skills. What kind of species taught every child how to survive in the wilderness? Species that had needed to, realized. Species that had experienced collapse, disaster, or conflict enough times to make survival skills mandatory knowledge. 3 weeks after submitting his request, received a message. His level 9 clearance was approved, but there was an attachment. Mandatory psychological evaluation required within 48 hours of accessing classified materials. That was unusual. Had accessed classified information before. Never had he needed a psychological evaluation afterward. What could be in these files that required mental health monitoring? Before accessing the files, had one more conversation. He found in the training room, practicing hand-to-hand combat against a hologram. "Can I ask you something personal?" said. "Stop the program." "Of course, sir." "Do you think humans are dangerous?" Considered the question carefully. "Yes," she finally said. "Should I be afraid of you?" "No, sir, you should trust us. There's a difference." Sat down on a bench. "Every species can be dangerous, have natural weapons, have armor and strength, have advanced technology, but dangerous isn't the same as evil." "Then why classify your history?" "Because context matters, sir. If you saw what humans did without understanding why, you'd judge us. If warrior species saw our tactics without understanding our restraint, they'd copy the wrong lessons." "What lessons?" "That war can be won through any means necessary. That total destruction is an option. That there are no rules when survival is at stake." Looked directly at him. "Those are true statements, sir, but they're dangerous truths. Species need to learn them slowly, carefully, with wisdom. Humans learned them fast, harshly, and paid a terrible price." "How terrible?" "That's in the classified files, sir, and I think you'll understand soon why we don't talk about it." Stood up. "Just remember when you read them that we survived. We learned. We changed. The humans you see now aren't the humans of our past." That night sat alone in his office. The classified files were available in his secure terminal. One click and he would know. He thought about sadness, caution, seriousness. These young humans carried some heavy knowledge passed down from their ancestors, a species-wide trauma maybe, or a species-wide shame. But they were also kind. They helped other students who struggled. They shared their food. They worked hard and never complained. Whatever darkness was in their history, it hadn't made them cruel. Click the file. A warning appeared. This information is classified to protect galactic stability and mental of coalition members. Contents may be disturbing. Psychological support is available. Do you wish to continue? He clicked yes. The file opened. It was thousands of pages long. Started reading. The first section was labeled Evolutionary Context. As he read, his 4 eyes grew wider. Then he moved to the second section, Historical Summary. His breathing became faster. The third section, Conflict Analysis. His hands started shaking. By the time he reached the fourth section, Classification Reasoning, understood everything, and he felt sick. He sat back from his computer, staring at nothing. No wonder the humans were quiet. No wonder they didn't brag. No wonder they hid their history. The psychological evaluation made perfect sense now, because what he just learned would give nightmares to most peaceful species. Humans weren't hiding weakness. They were hiding something far more terrifying. They were hiding what they'd overcome, what they'd survived, and what they were still capable of doing if pushed hard enough. Read through the night. He couldn't stop. Every page revealed something new, something disturbing, something that changed how he saw the quiet human cadets in his classroom. The first section explained human evolution. Unlike most sapient species who evolved as prey animals or peaceful omnivores, humans were persistent predators. They hunted by chasing prey for hours, sometimes days, until the animal collapsed from exhaustion. They weren't the strongest or fastest. They just never stopped coming. But that wasn't the disturbing part. The disturbing part was what happened when humans developed intelligence. They turned that same persistence on each other. The historical summary began 5,000 years ago when humans first started writing things down. Before that, evidence suggested another 5,000 years of prehistoric conflict. Stone weapons, cave paintings showing battles, mass graves. Read about the ancient wars, armies of thousands fighting with bronze swords, empires rising and falling, cities burned, populations enslaved. This was normal for developing civilizations, thought. Many species had primitive conflicts. Then came the medieval period. Humans developed better weapons, crossbows, longbows, siege engines, armor, castles. The wars got bigger. One conflict, called the 100 Years' War, lasted over a century. Multiple generations born, raised, and died knowing nothing but war. Still, this was somewhat normal. Primitive warfare during technological development. Then reached the section labeled Industrial Age. This was where things changed. Humans invented machines, factories, mass production, and they immediately applied these innovations to war. In one conflict called World War I, over 15 million people died in 4 years. 15 million. Had a population of 8 million. Humans lost nearly double his entire species in a single war. They used poison gas. They built tanks. They created machine guns that could kill hundreds of soldiers in minutes. They dug trenches across entire continents and fed millions of young men into them, gaining mere miles of territory. But that wasn't even the worst part. 20 years later, humans fought again. World War II. This war killed over 70 million people, 70 million in 6 years. Had to stop reading. He checked the numbers 3 times. Surely this was an error. No species could lose 70 million members and survive. But humans did. Their population in that era was about 2 billion. They lost over 3% of their entire species in 6 years and kept fighting. The file described weapons had never imagined. Bombs dropped from aircraft that could destroy entire cities, submarines that hunted ships beneath the oceans, rockets that fell from the sky, and the genocide, systematic murder of millions based on ethnicity, religion, or politics. Humans had industrialized murder. But even that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the end of World War II. Humans developed atomic weapons, nuclear bombs. In the file was a detailed description of the first use. 2 Japanese cities, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, destroyed in seconds. Over 200,000 people killed instantly or died slowly from radiation. Felt cold. His species had achieved nuclear technology, but they'd done it after spreading to 3 planets. If something went wrong, the species would survive. Humans developed world-ending weapons while still on 1 planet with nowhere to evacuate. He kept reading. The file called the next period the Cold War. 2 human nations, each with enough nuclear weapons to destroy the planet several times over, aimed them at each other for 50 years. They didn't fire them because of something called mutually assured destruction. The idea was simple and horrifying. If anyone launched nuclear weapons, everyone would die. Humanity lived under the threat of self-extinction for 50 years. An entire generation grew up knowing they could all die in 30 minutes if someone made the wrong decision. They taught children to hide under desks during nuclear attack drills, as if a wooden desk would protect them from weapons that vaporized cities. Read about the smaller conflicts during this period: Korea, Vietnam, Afghanistan, proxy wars where the nuclear powers fought through other nations, millions more dead, and these were called minor conflicts. The file included a section on weapons development. Humans had created chemical weapons that dissolved lungs, biological weapons that spread disease, that stayed hidden for decades, cluster bombs that scattered smaller bombs over wide areas, napalm that burned entire forests and everyone in them. They'd invented over 50 ways to kill each other efficiently, and they'd used most of them. Reached a section titled Warfare Innovation. This detailed how humans had turned war into a science. They studied tactics, strategy, logistics, psychology, and resource management. They had military academies going back centuries. They wrote thousands of books analyzing battles. One human military philosopher named Sun wrote a book on war strategy 2,500 years ago. It was still being studied. Humans had been perfecting warfare for that long. The file listed types of warfare humans had developed: conventional warfare, guerrilla warfare, psychological warfare, economic warfare, cyber warfare, biological warfare, nuclear warfare, total warfare. Total warfare. Read that section twice. It meant the complete mobilization of a society's resources for war. Everyone participated. Every factory made weapons. Every farm fed soldiers. Entire populations became targets because they supported the war effort. Humans had fought wars where they deliberately targeted civilians to break enemy morale. They called it strategic bombing. They destroyed homes, schools, hospitals to make the enemy give up. And it worked. They learned that total destruction could win wars faster than honorable combat. Felt sick. He took a break, got water, tried to calm down. Then he returned to reading. The next section covered post-Cold War conflicts. After the nuclear standoff ended, humans had smaller wars in the Middle East, Africa, Eastern Europe. These killed only a few million people total. The file noted this as an improvement. An improvement. Millions dead was an improvement. Then came the section had been dreading: classification reasoning. It was written by Human Coalition representatives 50 years ago. Read it carefully. During first contact evaluation, we humans faced a difficult question. Should we reveal our complete history to the galaxy? After careful consideration, our governments unanimously voted to classify Earth's combat records. Our reasoning is as follows. First, our history would terrify peaceful species. Over 94% of recorded history involved active warfare. We fought continuously for 5,000 years. We killed over 1 billion of our own species through conflict. Peaceful species would refuse to live near us. Second, our history would inspire warlike species. Our tactics, weapons and strategies are extremely effective but completely without honor by most galactic standards. We cannot risk warrior cultures copying our methods. Third, we ourselves are ashamed of much of our history. We committed genocide against our own kind. We invented weapons designed to maximize suffering. We destroyed our own environment during conflicts. We are not proud of what we survived. But fourth and most important, we have changed. The last major war on Earth ended in 2089. Since then, we have maintained global peace for over 200 years. We learned from our mistakes. We chose cooperation over conflict. We proved that a violent species can change. We don't hide our history out of fear. We hide it out of responsibility. We have knowledge that could harm the galaxy. We choose not to share it. If other species wish to know our past, they must reach level 9 clearance and undergo psychological evaluation. This ensures only mature, stable individuals access this information. This ensures it is not misused. We join the coalition not as warriors but as neighbors. We don't offer our skills in war. We offer our hard-earned wisdom in peace. Please accept us for who we are now, not who we were. Finished reading, he sat in silence for a long time. The psychological evaluation form appeared on his screen. Standard questions about his mental state after viewing disturbing material. He filled it out honestly. Yes, he felt disturbed. Yes, he understood why this was classified. Yes, he needed counseling support. Within an hour, a coalition psychologist contacted him. They talked for 2 hours. The psychologist was a peaceful species known for emotional intelligence. "You're not the first to react this way," the psychologist said gently. "Many who read these files struggle to reconcile the humans they know with humanity's history." "How do I look at them the same way?" asked. "You don't. You look at them with understanding. They carry this knowledge every day. Every human child learns this history and must live with the knowledge of what their species did. That's a heavy burden. They seem so normal, so kind." "That's the point," the psychologist said. "They chose to be kind despite their history. That's not weakness. That's strength. The hardest battle is against your own nature." After the call ended, sat alone, thinking about his human cadets. Sadness made sense now. Caution. Seriousness. They all carried the weight of 5,000 years of horror, wrapped in 200 years of hard-won peace. For 3 days avoided the human cadets. He needed time to process what he'd learned. Every time he saw them in the hallway, he remembered the numbers. 15 million, 70 million, 1 billion total. On the 4th day, knocked on his office door. "Sir, can we talk?" Hesitated, then nodded, entered and followed behind him. They sat across from his desk, their faces serious. "You read the files," said. "It wasn't a question." "How did you know?" "You've been avoiding us," said gently. "Everyone reacts the same way after reading. Fear, disgust, confusion, we understand." "I don't know how to talk to you anymore," admitted. "I look at you and I see those numbers, those weapons, those wars." "That's not who we are," said quietly. "But it's what you came from." "Yes," agreed. "It is. We can't change our history, we can only learn from it." Looked at these 2 young humans. They were barely adults, yet they spoke with such weight. How do you live with it, knowing what your species did? Leaned forward. "The same way anyone lives with difficult history, sir. We remember it, we study it. We promise to do better. My great-great-grandfather fought in one of the last wars. He killed people. He watched friends die. When he came home, he spent the rest of his life teaching peace. One person can't erase millions of deaths." "No," said, "but millions of people, each choosing peace, can prevent millions of future deaths. That's what we did. Every human alive today carries the memory of what we were, and every day we choose to be different." Wanted to believe them, but the files had shown such horror. "Your species developed weapons to destroy planets while still living on one planet. That's insane." Yes, agreed. It was. We nearly destroyed ourselves 3 times during the Cold War. 3 times we came within minutes of launching nuclear weapons. 3 times individuals decided not to push the button. He paused. We survived because people chose not to kill, even when they were scared and angry and had every reason to. But your tactics, said, the way you fought in the simulation, no honor, no mercy, just cold efficiency. Nodded slowly. That's what we learned, sir. When your species fights for 5,000 years, you learn what works. Honor doesn't stop bullets. Bravery doesn't defeat strategy. We learned to win at any cost because losing meant extinction. And now, those instincts are still there. Yes, said, they are. Every human has that knowledge passed down through generations. We know how to fight dirty, how to win ugly, how to be absolutely ruthless. He met's eyes. But knowing how to do something and choosing to do it are different things. Thought about this. You don't brag about combat because you're ashamed. No, corrected. We don't brag because we're careful. There's a difference. We're not ashamed of surviving. We're careful about teaching others what we learned while surviving. Why? Stood and walked to the window looking out at the academy grounds. Other species cadets were training below. Because our tactics work, sir. They work too well. If warrior species learned to fight the way we fight, wars would become more brutal, more total, more destructive. The galaxy has warrior cultures already, said. Yes, said. And they fight with honor, with codes, with limits. That's good. That's how war should be if it must happen at all, but human-style war has no limits. We learned that anything can be a weapon. Anyone can be a target. Any method can be justified if you're desperate enough. That's terrifying. That's why it's classified, turned back from the window. We joined the coalition to be protectors, not teachers of destruction. We share our medicine, our art, our culture. But our knowledge of war, that stays hidden. Was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked the question that had been bothering him most. If pushed, if truly threatened, would you fight that way again? Both humans looked at each other. Some silent communication passed between them. Finally spoke. If someone threatened to genocide humanity, if aliens tried to destroy Earth, if our children were in danger, she took a breath. Yes, we would use everything we know, every tactic, every strategy. We would fight with the same desperation our ancestors did. Without honor. Honor doesn't protect children, said flatly. Honor doesn't stop extinction. We would do whatever we had to do to survive, just like we always have. But, added quickly, we would also stop when the threat ended. We proved that. In 2089, after our last war, we could have kept fighting. Grudges remained. Hatreds existed. But we chose to stop. We chose peace. That's the important part, sir. Not what we can do, but what we choose to do. Stood and walked around his desk. He looked at these two humans with new understanding. They weren't hiding weakness. They were containing strength. Dangerous, terrible strength learned through of suffering. Why did you come here today? He asked. Because you needed to understand, said. You read the files. You're frightened of us now. We wanted you to know that fear isn't necessary. We're not monsters. We're just people who came from a difficult past. The other students should know, said. The others who mock you. No, said firmly. They shouldn't. Let them think we're weak. Let them think we're cowards. That's safer than them knowing the truth and either fearing us or trying to copy us. You protect them by accepting their scorn. Yes, said simply. That's part of our responsibility. We have dangerous knowledge. We keep it contained. Over the next weeks, watched the human cadets with new eyes. He saw how helped a struggling student with medical studies, patiently explaining concepts until they understood. He saw how shared his food with anyone who forgot their meal. He saw how volunteered to tutor younger students in mathematics. These were the same humans who demolished a team with cold efficiency. The same species that had nearly destroyed themselves multiple times. But they'd chosen to be helpers, teachers, friends. One day, a new instructor asked about the human cadets. I heard they don't talk about their combat history. Why is that? Remembered the files, the numbers, the weapons, the wars, but he also remembered words. We choose what we share. They're private people, said, but good soldiers. Judge them by their actions here, not their past. In class was still arrogant, but noticed he no longer challenged the humans directly. Something in that simulation had changed him. He'd seen something that disturbed him, even if he didn't understand what. Near the end of the term, assigned a final project. Each student would write about their species' greatest military victory and what made it honorable. The human cadets turned in papers about battles where they'd minimized casualties, protected civilians, or ended conflicts quickly. Not their biggest victories, but their most merciful ones. His paper was about the Berlin airlift, where humans had fed a city of enemies rather than let them starve. Wrote about medical teams treating wounded on both sides of conflicts. Wrote about peace negotiations that prevented wars. Graded them all highly. These humans understood something most warrior species didn't. True strength wasn't just the ability to destroy. It was the ability to choose not to. On graduation day, watched his students receive their commissions. The looked proud and fierce in their uniforms. The stood tall and strong. The were precise and disciplined. And the humans, they looked quietly confident, ready to serve, ready to protect, ready to use their training for good. Approached after the ceremony. Thank you, sir, for understanding. I'm not sure I fully understand, admitted, but I respect what you carry, what you've chosen to do with it. That's all we ask, sir. Joined them, her uniform crisp and proper. Will you tell other instructors about the files? Only if they have clearance and need to know, said. Your secret is safe. It's not our secret, said. It's our burden and our responsibility. They saluted and walked away. Watched them go, these young humans with old souls. They carried the weight of 5,000 years of warfare, wrapped in 200 years of peace. They knew how to destroy but chose to protect. They knew how to hate but chose to love. That evening, updated his personal log. Under the entry for human cadets, he wrote, They are not warriors by nature. They are survivors who learned warfare through necessity. They do not brag about combat because they understand its true cost. They do not share their history because they know its dangers. They serve not for glory but for duty. They fight not for honor but for protection. Judge them not by what they can do but by what they choose to do, and they choose peace. He paused, then added one final note. Humanity's greatest victory was not defeating their enemies. It was defeating themselves, their own worst instincts. That is a battle most species never fight. Humans fought it and won. That is why they deserve our respect, not our fear. Closed the log. Outside his window, he could see the 6 human graduates gathering with their classmates, laughing and talking about the future. Young people ready to protect the galaxy, carrying ancient wisdom, choosing new paths. The galaxy was safer because humans had learned from their past, and was grateful he'd taken the time to understand why these quiet warriors chose silence over boasting, restraint over aggression, peace over glory. Some victories, he realized, are won not with weapons but with choices, and humanity's choice to be better than their history was perhaps their greatest victory of all.